Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are we today?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you? I guess it's not morning anymore.
It's been a hectic day. It is release week for DCL summer itineraries, and we had Run Disney Wine and Dine registration this morning. So all of the things to keep Christy and I busy.
Yes, for sure.
But turning it towards cruising, we have an exciting episode here because we are not talking about just a Disney cruise, but also a celebrity cruise. So we are going to discuss the Disney cruise in a little bit more detail and then spend some time kind of comparing and contrasting the two cruise lines and the benefits you could get from each one. And to discuss that, we would like to welcome back to the show, Derry. Derry, how are we today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Great to be here with you guys.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to come back. We are excited to discuss both of these sailings here, two very different sailings as well.
Yeah, very different.
Well, why don't we start with the Disney sailing? Tell us about the sailing you booked, who sailed with you, and why you booked it.
So I booked a 3-night on Disney Dream in November, and it went to both Lookout Key and Castaway Key. So that was very attractive to me. I hadn't been to Lookout Key before, so I was really interested in that. And this was my first adults only cruise. I went with my sister, who lives out in St. Louis, and I live in Virginia. So we don't get to spend enough time together. So the two of us were really excited to fly down to Fort Lauderdale and for her to try out Disney Cruise Line for the first time.
How was the experience flying into Fort Lauderdale and then getting to the port there? We've actually discussed the train, I think, more than we have flying in down there.
Okay, yeah. So very easy to fly in. We were coming in on different airlines, but I was able to walk between the two terminals pretty easily. She had recently had, I think it was her third operation on one of her feet. So she was in a boot and also had a knee scooter and could not put any weight on her injured or her recovering foot. So I went over to meet her to help her with her luggage, obviously. And we just took an Uber to a hotel. We stayed at the AC Hotel, Fort Lauderdale Airport, because I'm a big Marriott points person. That was beautiful, worked out perfectly. And we stayed there the night before. I personally would always prefer to fly in the day before getting on a cruise. So that's what we did. So that was our experience flying in.
Did they have a airport shuttle?
Yes, they did offer an airport shuttle.
Was it crazy to get it? Because I feel like Fort Lauderdale, sometimes that airport pickup is like mass chaos. I've used it.
We called them and then decided like what they had would have been hard for us to fit into with her situation. So we used like a Uber van instead.
Okay.
But it didn't seem like it was going to be hard. We actually saw there's a sister hotel, like a regular Marriott that's sort of partnered with this AC Marriott, and their shuttle, I think it's probably the same shuttle. It was out there. So I don't know, maybe certain times of day it's harder than others, but this was mid-afternoon. It wasn't bad.
Oh, good. And then how'd you get to the port the next day?
We took an Uber as well. So the hotel offers a round trip shuttle, but we didn't need a round trip shuttle. So like it just wasn't worth for us paying the per price. I think it was like $20 a person for the round trip shuttle service. And we just needed the two of us to go one way. So we just took an Uber. It was incredibly quick, like 10 minutes or less, very easy. And I loved going from Fort Lauderdale. I thought this is fantastic. I've gone from Miami before. It was a little bit more complicated. This was really nice.
Yeah, that area is all like right there. It's very compact. All those airport hotels are right there. And then the cruise port is so close to the airport, even the highway for people driving back. It's so much better than having to go further south.
It was. Even with her mobility challenges, we walked to dinner the night before very easily in this nice Firebird grill. And we went to a little local grocery store and picked up some wine for our stateroom the next day. That was super easy. So yeah, the whole thing was very convenient.
Awesome. So you take your Uber. What did you think of the terminal situation at Fort Lauderdale?
So you know what? Ironically, I have never sailed from Port Canaveral. None of my cruises have been from an actual official Disney port before. So I was just blown away. I thought this little mouse doorway was adorable, and seeing like real Disney employees or, cast members there. It was super fun. I thought it was very smooth, and it was kind of like staying on property at Walt Disney World. You're kind of like already in the bubble from the moment that you get there. Everything was very smooth. We had no challenges at all. We had boarding group 6, and I think our arrival time was like 11:20, I'm going to say. So we just showed up right at our arrival time. They were holding people back. They weren't just letting everybody in. We kind of had to move around a whole bunch of people that were waiting for their time to be allowed in. But yeah, it was extremely quick. Just scanned our stuff and went right in, got right on board. And of course, we went to the sit down lunch, which is my favorite thing. So I was really happy that we had such a smooth entry so we could easily get to sit down lunch.
From there, what's your normal embarkation day look like?
Well, I guess this wasn't necessarily my normal pattern, because my normal travel party is my husband and our 2 kids. So this was something pretty different. And the rest of us have been on a few Disney cruises by now. So it wasn't actually our normal routine, but my sister kind of wanted to see everything. So we did a big tour. I think we started on the pool deck. And we first had lunch, and then we went up to the pool deck, and she was all about the self-serve ice cream. So we got that. And yeah, she was very interested in the adult only areas. So we went over to check out Cove Cafe and like Satellite Falls, all the stuff on that side. Then let's see, I think we went to see the spa. She really wanted to learn about that. I think after that, our room was ready. So we went and just settled in our room. We actually did a guaranteed rate because we booked really last minute, like a month in advance. We were on deck 2, which I'd never been that low before. And I was really curious to see how that was going to be. We had an ocean view stateroom. It was conveniently right by the forward. It was forward, but it was right by the elevator. So it was like almost mid. It's like right in that area. And that was perfect because for her to have quick access to the elevator really cut down on the walking back and forth that she had to do with her knee scooter thing, which wasn't 100% comfortable for her to do. So, that worked out really well. I think after that, we put our swimsuits on and hung out with like in the hot tubs area in the adults only zone. Oh, and we went to see the sail away party as well. And that was interesting because when we got there were already some, kids kind of gathered by the stage and everything. And we couldn't get that close, which was fine. But one of the cast members came over to us and said, oh, we have room for you in our accessible area. And I actually hadn't even thought about that. I didn't even know that was a thing. And she showed us. And so she explained that my sister could come in and then like one companion could come. So since it was just the 2 of us, that worked out really well. And they brought me a chair and her a chair and kind of like set us up in this special area right by the stage.
Oh, nice.
So that was really fun. And my sister loved that. She'd never seen a show like that before. She hasn't been to Disney World very often. So for her, it was like super special. And that was really nice. And then a waiter came over and offered her a fruity drink. So she was even more impressed. So yeah, she's like, this is amazing. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very good.
I would love to stick with the accessibility access since we have not discussed that very recently on DCL. Did you and your sister come across like any challenges with that? And were there any other accommodations that surprised you with the accessibility?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that the very first thing we did upon boarding was go talk to the dining team because I was hoping we could somehow get a Paolo reservation. And it was only a 3-night cruise and the wait list was like a mile long. So that wasn't a thing. But we also asked them where our dining table was located in the main dining room, because my sister did have some challenges sort of fitting between tables and things like that with her knee scooter setup and this large boot that was on her leg. And they looked it up for us and said, oh, you're right in the middle of every dining room. And they knew like why we were asking. And so they offered to put us in a more easier area to access. And I had requested a private table and they had already given us a private table. So that part wasn't a challenge just in terms of her fitting in the space. She kind of needs the space of 2 people, 2 chairs in order to maneuver all this stuff. So that was really helpful. So, but obviously if we hadn't thought of that, I guess the first night we would have been like, this is really awkward. And I'm sure they would have tried to help us, but it was great to have it taken care of ahead of time. Let's see, other things. I guess the one other thing on the ship that was really helpful was accessible seating in the main theater, in the Walt Disney Theater. So we went to see Beauty and the Beast. That was the only show we saw actually on the ship just because this trip was so short. And I knew ahead of time that there was accessible seating in the theater. That was something that I had thought of. And we went to ask about that. And they directed us up to, I guess, deck 5 to come up into the balcony. And there's some spots there that are for accessible seating. So we went there, waited in line we were there early. We waited in line for the doors to open, but there were many other people ahead of us in line that needed accessible seating. So by the time it was our turn, they didn't have a space for us, but the cast member was super helpful. Oh, so the crew member was very helpful and contacted someone else on a lower level. And they said, okay, we'll take care of them. And I didn't really understand what was going on, but they directed us to take the elevator down. And we ended up being directed by this really lovely crew member back like underneath the stage, like past some crew member staterooms and such, to take the back elevator thing that led us to like the ground floor of the seating of the theater. And there's some accessible seating up front as well that you can only access really that way if you are, I could have gotten there, but my sister couldn't have gotten there down the stairs inside the theater. So they actually had a reserved seat for us that way. So that was really nice. And I have to say, she was completely surprised. I keep repeating this, but she was so blown away by what Disney Cruise Line could do entertainment wise with their theater productions. She said she could never have, like, she's been on some other cruise lines before, but she could never imagine this level of, production being possible on a moving ship. So she just loved it. And it was I'd seen this one before, but this was a particularly beautiful, really well done version of their Beauty and the Beast. So it was really special. That was super helpful.
Well, why don't we move towards entertainment around the ship then? What other activities did you and your sister get up to?
Well, we did hear quite a bit of music. They had a lot of the typical musicians, maybe typical isn't the right word, but a lot of talented duets and trios performing different instruments and singing in different venues. And we enjoyed all of that. It was really, really fun. And I think our favorite thing was Muppets trivia. And I hadn't even ever noticed Muppets trivia as an option on my previous Disney cruises. And so she thought that was hilarious. It was way too hard for me. They were all referencing things from like the 1970s and like early 80s, which I couldn't remember very well. So, but it was a lot of fun. And the crew member that was leading that from the entertainment staff was telling us that her job when she's not working with Disney Cruise Line is to be like a personal assistant to some British celebrities or something. So I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah. So everyone was like really interested in that. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. And apparently the answer to like most of the questions is it Dr. Teeth? I can't remember what the character is. Whatever.
Oh yeah. I don't know.
And I was like, okay.
I don't remember that answer, but I was going to say too that Amber and I and Dave did Muppets trivia on our treasure cruise.
Well, I was regretting that my husband wasn't there because he probably could have answered all of those. So that was a bummer, but it was really fun. And like I said, I was surprised. I hadn't even heard of Muppets trivia. So it makes sense that it exists. But yeah, that was super fun. Probably our favorite thing that we did, like in the entertainment zone.
And I love the music that you talked about. I think that the original 4 ships have the advantage of the venues to play music, in my opinion, versus the newer ships. Even the size of the venues that they can host people in, I think is an advantage. So that's something great to experience on the Dream.
Yeah, on our last night, my sister was resting in the stateroom and I was just hanging out sort of in the atrium, like a couple levels above. And there was this really talented vocalist from Trinidad and Tobago who was performing a set. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to miss this so much. It was really nice. I loved it.
I love it when you can sit and listen and read a book like off to the side, but not feel like you're interrupting or like being rude by reading, but when you can be tucked away. And I don't know, that's one of my favorite things to do on DCL.
It's so fun to see like younger kids dancing with their parents and stuff. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to circle back around to dining when we get into our compare and contrast, but would you give us a couple highlights, like what your favorite restaurant or favorite meal was from your rotational dining?
Yeah, I think my favorite meal this time was Enchanted Garden, the ahi tuna and the scallops. I'm a big seafood person, so that's only really works if you're a seafood person, but that was probably my favorite. My sister loves steak and like beef of all kinds. I do too. So I think she liked the steak at Animator's Palette. that has like the wasabi mashed potatoes with it the best. But we both like the fried brie. I know it's one of Christy's favorites over at Royal Palace. That appetizer is probably my favorite appetizer of all of them. And we did have a Pirates night, but they didn't have the Pirates menu. I guess just because it's only 3 nights. Maybe they want you to experience all the standard menus. I would just guess.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So I was preparing her for the pirate menu and then it never came. So that's fine. That was fine. But I will say another thing about that experience at Animator's Palette was, we had Crush coming to the tables, and my sister was also thought that was fantastic and really creative idea. She was really into that. So that was fun. She actually hadn't been to the equivalent thing at Walt Disney World before. So that was her first experience with that. And yeah, it was fun. Like I kept having these moments where she was seeing something for the first time and that would make me kind of reappreciate it again. So that was really cool.
I love that. I know this was her first DCL cruise, but was it her first cruise ever?
No, she'd been on a couple other cruises, but like no cruises like in the last 15 years or something. So I think she'd been on Carnival and Royal before. I remember she said like one was to Alaska and probably the other one was like in the Caribbean, but they were pretty distant memories for her. So I think a lot of the cruising industry as a whole has changed since then. So not technically her first cruise, but almost like it was in some ways.
Well, when you discuss like main or included dining as well, Disney is an entirely different concept from what you see even on a lot of contemporary ships nowadays still.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say that my sister really appreciated the continental room service breakfast because it was just nice for her not to have to schlep all her mobility gear in the morning, like outside. And I don't normally do that. I usually go up to Cabanas myself. So I hadn't really thought of that, but I just say like that was really appreciated by her.
We love forced wake up with continental breakfast and coffee on a cruise.
Yeah, I actually brought her coffee down from Cove Cafe because she had a sort of specific order. But yes.
Such a good sister.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we move towards our port stops? We have 2 fantastic stops, both Disney's private island experiences, Castaway and Lookout. Which one of these was first?
First was Lookout Key.
So your first time at Lookout, what did you and your sister think?
It's just so gorgeous. I had been, looking at lots of videos, lots of photos, reading people's trip reports, and I didn't think I'd be getting there this year until a month before this happened. So the whole thing was very, very exciting for me. We were concerned initially because we knew that the pier was long for a very good reason to protect the coral, but we were concerned about if that would be too much for my sister to try to walk it in her situation with her scooter thing. And they did give us the option of signing up the night before to take their golf cart type transportation option. But it was going to start kind of at a later time. And we just wanted to be there really early. So we looked out the window to see that the pier looked like smooth concrete for the most part. And that's not too hard for her to maneuver. So we're like, all right, we're just going to do it. And, we'll play it by ear, but we're just going to do it. And it worked out totally fine. So we got off as early as we could, as early as they let us out, and walked over. It was interesting at that initial tram stop. There were a lot of crew members that this was their first time coming because I think it was either the Dream's maybe first or second time being at Lookout Key. And so there were a number of photographer crew members that were there that were supposed to be getting to the central part of the island, and they were confused about if they were allowed to get on the guest tram or not. And we were trying to figure out where the accessible, part of the tram would be. So we saw some crew members in their uniform, like white uniforms, and we asked them, and they said, "Oh, come with us." And they were super kind. They said, "Stand right here, and the accessible seat will be like at the end of the tram." So they let us on. But I will say there was some frustration from guests at this point. There were many more guests than would fit on like 1 or 2 trams that were waiting to get on, and some confusion about like where to stand and like what's the beginning of the line and what's the end of the line. So my sister and I were saying, you know what, it's actually of benefit to us that she has this mobility problem because the crew were helping us figure all this out. We wouldn't mind waiting, but it was very confusing, like where to wait, how long to wait, like what's happening. But anyway, we waited maybe like, I'm going to say 10 minutes, and then a tram came and they put us on, and they asked us if some of these photography crew members could sit with us. And we said, of course. So we had such a fun chat with them on the way to the sort of central, I can't remember the names of all these tram stops, but they have very cool names, like the Goombay Center. I don't know. It's all very cool. I was loving all the mosaic tiles that they use in the decor, like on the pillars and the signage, and very vibrant colors, which my sister was not as impressed. She's an artist, actually, by profession. And everyone has different tastes. I like these very bright, almost like 80s and color combinations. A little bit much for her, but I thought all of it was super beautiful and fun. So we got there, and then we got off and took a look at what merch they have. It was really fun to see the lounge flies and stuff that I'd just seen photos of before. Just check everything out. And then we thought we would go to Serenity Bay, the adults only zone, because we could without kids there. And there's a long series of like wooden boardwalks that lead you there. That was a little bit harder for her to maneuver, these sort of bumpy wooden slats, which of course, like in my normal life, I wouldn't have thought of that. So we just took it really slow. And then I noticed that there were a couple places on the way where they had beach wheelchairs available that you could borrow. So we didn't actually know at what point we would run out of walkway and need a beach wheelchair. So we just walked all the way down. So we went near to where the Blue Hole bar is, which is part of Serenity Bay. It's like the last bar, I think, at the end, and decided like we would set ourselves up there. She really wanted to be able to see the ocean and kind of get to the sand. That was pretty hard to do. I left her there temporarily, went back to the closest place that had a beach wheelchair, which was, I don't know, maybe like a 5-minute walk from where we were. Brought that back, like transferred her to that. And then we went down this sort of concrete ramp that led to the beach area, kind of just really right in front of the Blue Hole bar. And yeah, it was a bit challenging. I got her there. We got her like in a lounge chair with an umbrella. That was all very nice. And then she had her book and her knitting. And so she was happy for a bit. And so then I went and did a bunch of exploring all around and got to see the parade. Oh gosh, what's it called? The Junkaroo, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was super fun. Recently on Disney Plus, they released the video of that. Like the video.
I'll have to look.
Yeah. And it was really cool to see sort of behind the scenes, the different musicians and artists that were involved in creating all of that. Anyway, but that came out just recently. So I hadn't seen that in advance, and I was still really impressed by all of it. It was super fun. Then I got a text from my sister that she was feeling kind of uncomfortable being completely reliant on either me or strangers to like move from where she was, because she couldn't herself get up out of this beach chair, out of this lounge chair, like into her wheelchair. And then she couldn't actually push herself in the wheelchair because it's like a beach wheelchair that you can't push yourself. So after like an hour, she just really wasn't comfortable being there, which was kind of sad. So I went and got her and like walked her to see a couple more spots that were off of boardwalks. And then she really just wanted to get back on the ship. So I took her back to the ship, and she actually had a great time. She had lunch on the ship. I stayed on the island for the most part, but she went back to the ship, hung out in Satellite Falls, and really enjoyed herself.
Did you get her back to the ship, or did you get her to the tram, or?
I took her to the tram stop that was in the middle of the island. Yeah.
Okay.
And then she went back from there. Yeah, there weren't any lines at that time. It was like midday, so it was like easy to get in terms of you didn't have to wait, but you do have to actually take the tram, like you're saying. So yeah, it's a distance. But I guess her overall feeling about it was it wasn't very accessible in her opinion, and just it was challenging getting her scooter over the wood boardwalks, and just, I don't know. There's a lot of it that she couldn't actually get the view she wanted. Like there's really nowhere she could position herself and have the view that she wanted. Anyway, so that was all really interesting to me, because again, like normally I wouldn't have noticed any of that. So it was
right. And there's all that nature, like natural nature that's there that they wanted to disrupt the least amount of as possible. But as a result of that, yeah, that could be a limitation. Let's just stick really quick with accessible and jump to Castaway. So what did she think about the accessibility at Castaway?
She thought Castaway was fantastic. She thought everything was super easy, super close. There wasn't anything off limits to her. We again did something kind of similar. We went to Serenity Bay, and I can't remember the name of the bar there, but it has like a deck right in front of it. And we were there pretty early. So we got 2 great seats in the shade. There's like lots of palm trees there. So it's pretty shady. And she had her knitting, and she loved it because she could get up and go someplace else if she wanted to, and then come back. And I, again, did a lot of like exploring and taking photos, and I ran the 5K at Castaway, but she didn't have that feeling of being helpless there.
Right.
She had full access to everything.
Did they have regular like chairs and tables, or was it only lounge chairs by that bar? Like, what did she sit in?
Oh, she sat in like it wasn't a lounge chair. It was like a regular chair, but it was like maybe like an Adirondack type chair. I want
Oh, okay.
cushion chair. And then they have little tables, like little tiny cocktail tables, such.
Okay.
So at
That's great.
lunch, like she could have gotten her own lunch, which is what she really liked, but she didn't need to because I was there. So I just went to the Serenity 2 or whatever it's called. I don't know, the food option there, and brought her lunch from there. So yeah, that worked out much better. And it was really interesting because, of course, I was telling her how amazing ahead of time, like how amazing Lookout Key was going to be. And I'd seen all these videos, and it's like brand new and everything. And she did think it was beautiful, and the water was beautiful. And she herself has been to the Bahamas quite a bit on land-based trips. But she just felt like Castaway Key is like miles and miles above what they have at Lookout Key. And it was really interesting, just this lens that she was seeing it through with her mobility challenges. So I was really surprised.
And then what did you think of sort of, I mean, we don't want to do a whole long comparison, but what did you think looking at both islands?
I love how there's so many different things about them. I was kind of afraid they were going to be really similar, and I found them to be extremely different experiences. I love nature and hiking. And so I think my favorite thing on both islands combined was my walk on the nature trail at Lookout Key. And I just went all the way down to like those limestone cliffs, and like really there was no one else there. And they had really great signage about different birds and plants that was really well written along the way. So I actually learned quite a bit. I saw the curly-tailed lizard, which was really fun. Yeah.
And did you do that walk after you dropped your sister back off at the tram?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I stayed fairly close to, I didn't go very far from where she was because I just didn't know what she might need. So while she was there with me, I was pretty close. She had to text. She couldn't yell at me. She had to text me, but I could come, quickly to see what she, after she went back on the ship, I just did all kinds of exploring. I basically went to every single thing. I wanted to see the Sebastian's Cove, which is that amazing kids splash pad playground area. Took like 10,000 photos, talked to a lot of cast members, learned like where they live and all about, I just kind of went to town with it.
Did you go in the water at all?
I touched the water. It was pretty cold for me. I did have my swimsuit on and my water shoes. I went in a little bit, like maybe up to my knees, but I'm really sensitive to cold water. So I don't know. I don't think it was that cold. I'm just like extra sensitive. So I wasn't actually planning on being able to do much swimming, and I didn't, but
got it.
Yeah, I love Castaway Key, so I don't really not trying to make it look bad in any way. Castaway Key, I think, is my experience there was even more social. I think things are just like tighter, closer together, fuller, more people everywhere that you go. So it's a different experience. It'd be interesting to see if my teenagers had any thoughts about the two. I'm the only one, currently from my native family here who's been to Lookout Key, so they have no thoughts on it yet. But yeah, we had a beautiful day at Castaway Key too. We had great weather both days, lots of great fruity drinks, and the food was actually quite good. I will say Lookout Key, I had to wait a very long time in line to get my lunch. I don't know if that's something they're still working the kinks out, which they may well be. Probably waited, I'm going to say it was like 40 minutes. Yeah,
That's
actually
really long.
I was trying to keep an eye on how long it took me to get the food. I went to True 2, I think, for lunch. But I also came back to the Serenity Bay area to get dessert because I noticed they had a slightly different ice cream set up there where you could have like a sundae type thing with like a cookie, and then hard packed ice cream was an option there with some toppings. Like they had crushed Oreos and sprinkles, and maybe they had some candy or something. So they were making it for you, but you could just designate what you wanted. So that looked, I have a big sweet tooth, so I was interested in that. Another thing I loved was Lookout Key's Serenity Bay had music, like live music, I think the entire time I was there, which I was really surprised by. Super talented folks. And that just really lent something special, I thought, to that area. Did not experience anything like that at Castaway Key. So I think that was a big plus for Lookout Key too, just for me, because I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Castaway for a while used to have that gazebo where they would do live music, but I don't think I can recall seeing it like any of the last few times I've been there. But when we were at Lookout, they definitely had the music at Serenity, and that band was just like going to town the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, I love them. So my first Disney cruise was in 2022. So I don't know anything before that.
Well, sadly, this is a quicker cruise and you have to debark. What was your disembarkation process like? And did that all work out well with your sister as well?
Yeah, it did. We did the self-service walk off. So we just took our time. We weren't in a hurry because our flights weren't till that evening from Fort Lauderdale. So we had plenty of time. We had a nice breakfast. Actually, I guess my sister had breakfast in the room and I went up to Cabanas. And one thing that was really cool on this cruise, which it might have just been my personal experience, but they let me eat outside at the back of Cabanas, which in the other cruises I've had with Disney, they've like locked that door on the last morning and they didn't let me go outside because they're just trying to keep things clean and, move along. So
they do also shut that if they're refueling.
Oh, so that could be the reason. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But, Fort Lauderdale being such a big port with so many other ships there, for me, that was really exciting. I went out and there was like Celebrity Beyond was there and there were like a couple princess ships. I was loving like the view. So there was no one else out there at the moment I was there. So I had an amazing, like very memorable breakfast out there that morning. We really weren't in a hurry, but we left, I don't know, I'm going to say like 8:30 or something, left our stateroom. And had no issues getting an elevator even, got off the ship. And I had reserved us a resort day pass at the Hilton Fort Lauderdale Marina, which is very close, obviously, it's like almost part of the marina. And that was really fun. So we took an Uber over there just because they do have a shuttle service, but it seemed like a lot of people were waiting. And with my sister's situation, we just took an Uber. That took like 2 minutes. It's like around the corner, but legally, you can't walk out of the port, so you have to have some sort of transportation. So we did that. They stored our luggage for us, their version of Bell Services, and gave us water bottles, towels, places to change. And we sat out by the pool, and they actually have a great restaurant there, right? Like a pool bar restaurant with really delicious food. So we spent our day there. My sister was really happy in the shade with her knitting again. And I just like walked all around the marina, checked out these crazy, large, expensive yachts, took some photos for my husband, who's a big boat ship person. And yeah, just like chatted with my sister the rest of the day. And then our flights were pretty close in time, even though they were on different airlines. And so we took an Uber again at the end of the day to the airport, which was also super close, easy. Yeah, that was all really easy to do.
So before we move on to our little compare and contrast section with Celebrity, talking about your sister just a little bit more, this was her first Disney cruise, which is always fun to talk about first-time cruisers. Was there anything she mentioned that had surprised her or she thought was special about Disney Cruise Line? And does she have any desire to come back?
Yeah, so I think I already said this, but she was completely surprised by Beauty and the Beast. The production show, like the theater production show, that it could be that intricate, have such talented performers in it, and just be that well done on a ship. So that made a huge impression on her. She really enjoyed the food, and she was really impressed by the fact that there were things happening in like Animator's Palette, like while you're eating. There's like something happening in the dining room. That was something that she'd never experienced before that she thought was really fun. She also really loved the adults only area, both, the bars and lounges and the outdoor areas as well. And wasn't really expecting to have that much real estate, I think, portioned off for adults on when she thinks Disney, she thinks more kids. So this was something, surprising for her. And she absolutely would sail Disney again. I think she's also interested in Celebrity, which I know we're going to talk about next. But I told her about our subsequent Celebrity cruise, and now that's of interest to her too. But yeah, she she didn't feel like Disney was just for kids after she experienced it. She absolutely would like to go again.
Awesome. We love bringing people into the DCL family here.
Yes. It's an expensive habit, but it's a nice one.
Isn't that the truth?
Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about Celebrity Cruise Line. So you also recently sailed aboard the Celebrity Summit. Why don't you tell our guests a little bit about that sailing?
So my family is my husband and our 2 teenagers who are 18 and 14 sailed from San Juan, Puerto Rico during Christmas week. We did a 7-night sailing to and from San Juan. And I'll see if I can remember all the ports now, but we had St. Martin, St. Lucia, Barbados, Antigua, and Dominica. I believe were our 5 ports. And we had 1 day at sea at the end. And we had 2 ocean view staterooms again on deck 2. So another experience on deck 2. That was actually, we booked this in June, which was actually pretty late to reserve a Christmas week sailing. So we also had to kind of go with what was available. It was important to us, to me anyway, to have our teenagers right next door because they had never not been with us in the same room. And we also hadn't been on Celebrity before. So I think they would have been fine in another deck. But I just felt more comfortable. And there were these 2 great staterooms available next door on deck 2. So we went with that.
Were they side by side or did they connect?
They were just side by side, no connection.
So what was the allure to booking Celebrity then?
Well, I guess I've always wanted to try it. And I know a lot of people that have sailed it before. And I would say the price was very attractive. And the way that our kids are both in high school as of this year. So that really limited when we can take these bigger trips. So we're kind of forced to go at these expensive times of year now for the most part. So that kind of weighed in as well. And we had never been to any of these ports, including San Juan. So looking at the itinerary, that was also a really big selling point for my husband and I. These were all places that we really wanted to see and had never been. So kind of all of that added together is what drew us to Celebrity for this one.
So Celebrity and Royal Caribbean lets you put your kids in adjacent cabins if you are booked. Did you guys do it that way, or did you book the cabin as one adult in each cabin?
We booked it as one adult in each cabin, and then we went to guest services on embarkation and just got extra keys for everybody so that we could switch.
Which the one thing I would say about that is it's probably easier because you can do your online check-in properly and even processing payments. You don't get these like yelling at you messages that there's a minor in there and it's allowed, but their system doesn't quite figure it out. So honestly, that's probably the easiest way. Did you find any issues with doing it the way you did it?
No major issues. I would say the first crew member that we talked to about getting the keys was like, oh, that's not allowed. One adult needs to be in the room and all that. And I knew it was allowed. So I just said, okay, like it's fine, whatever. He gave us the keys anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, you can make adjacent room reservations on both of those lines. So Disney does not allow that, but on the other ones they do. So yeah, so we know officially it's allowed because they allow it. Let's just start really quick from San Juan. Where did you stay and how did that all work? Like getting on the ship in San Juan?
Yeah, so we flew in the day before. We were very nervous because flying, I think it was December 20th. It was very scary for us to fly that time of year, just all the cancellations, the weather potential, all that, like extra people in the air, just all of that. But it all worked out. We changed planes in Fort Lauderdale. It's very familiar for me at that point. And we spent the night at Hyatt Place. There's a few of them, but this one is really close to Old San Juan. And it was fantastic. They have free shuttle service to several different sites around San Juan, great free breakfast included, like most Hyatt places have. And most importantly for our family, they have that extra sleeper sofa that we need so that we can all stay in one room. So we actually used points for that. It's actually a pretty expensive time of year, even at the Hyatt place. So we were fortunate that we had points to book for that. And from there, we took an Uber because of some issues with the port that you would usually sail out of for embarkation at San Juan. They were using the other port, which is normally the one that's in Old San Juan is normally only used for day visits, like port days. for cruise ships. And this is the normal port where if San Juan is a stop on your cruise that you get off and you're like right in Old San Juan, basically, they just don't normally put the ships there if they're embarking from there. So because of that, the facility isn't completely set up for that. It just seems like it's not set up to hold all the people. There's like nowhere to wait really or anything like that. But it wasn't too bad. It was pretty efficient, actually. We waited in kind of a long line outside, and then you hand over your luggage as you go, just the way that they didn't really have porters because it wasn't set up for that. I don't know, it's a little bit hard to explain, but it wasn't exactly what I was used to, but it wasn't bad. So kind of as you're waiting in line, you come upon a place off to the left where you give your checked luggage.
And the Summit is the oldest ship that Celebrity has, and is in their smaller category. That would be like the size of the Wonder and the Magic. What did you think of the ship when you got on her?
Yeah, so I was very happy. Well, one of the reasons why we were good with sailing on her was because she has been renovated in recent years. So like right before the pandemic, she was renovated and then like really not used for like 2 years basically because of the pandemic. So she was in really good condition in the interior. And yeah, I thought she was really beautiful. I definitely on the exterior, maybe a bit more like rust and stuff than I'm used to with Disney Cruise Line, but nothing like super off-putting. I thought she was in really good shape. We didn't have any complaints about our rooms or the restaurants or anything like that. Everything seemed to be in good condition.
And their beds split, so your kids could sleep in real beds.
I love that.
Separate beds.
Yeah, that was actually, I should have mentioned that on the Disney Dream. My sister and I didn't have that benefit. So I was on the couch there, which wasn't the most comfortable. But for me at my age, like my kids don't mind it when we share a cabin on DCL, but I'm kind of big and old. So it wasn't super comfortable. But anyway, it was fantastic. The beds were very comfortable. And the fact, like you said, the fact they could split and our teens could each have a twin size bed was very nice. This all felt very luxurious to us to have like 2 rooms. We had never done that before. So it seemed like very spacious for us.
Any other thoughts on how the stateroom compared to your DCL staterooms?
Let's see. My daughter and I had done this whole list of comparisons, and I have it on my phone. So I'm just scrolling through to see if we had done something about the rooms. If we had, I think we would have said the beds were our most significant difference. Yeah, I guess we hadn't gotten to that category yet, but they were much smaller, significantly smaller than Disney Cruise Line. But because we had 2 of them, we didn't really suffer from that issue. But we did talk about how technically these rooms could have had 3 or 4 people. One of them could have had 3 and one could have had 4, just the way that the bedding was set up. That would have been very, very tight compared to what we're used to. So we are pretty spoiled from the spaciousness of Disney Cruise Line staterooms for sure. Oh, and no split bathroom. So I kind of missed that too. I really do like the split bathroom. So it was okay though. Bathroom was very modern.
Even with your husband, you like the split bathroom better? Like it's just you and your husband in the room. Like you're not competing with the kids. You still like the split bathroom better?
Yeah, I do, because I just like to be able to like do makeup or something while, he's taking a shower or whatever he's doing. Like I still like that option, but I've never experienced it. So I don't know, maybe I wouldn't care as much if I actually experienced that. We've always had the kids in our room, so I don't know.
You mentioned that you have a list already made of your compare and contrast. Why don't we just work off of that? Like, let's make all of our jobs easier here.
All right, absolutely. Okay, so the first thing that we talked about was the food. So we said that Disney has a very flexible dress code for main dining rooms, and most of the specialty dining is also flexible. We did some specialty dining on Celebrity, but I didn't with my sister on Disney. Celebrity had slightly stricter dress codes, not crazy strict.
You can't wear shorts though.
Right.
Which is the biggest problem with my men. And I just reminded them because we have a cruise coming up for 12 nights. And I'm like, and don't forget, you have to wear long pants. And they're both like, oh yeah, I forget about that.
You're right. And this was pretty hot where we were. So that was kind of a pain. We always do late dining, so we had plenty of time to get changed, but it was kind of annoying. Like you did have to think, oh, I can't go do such and such first and then go to dinner because I'm going to have to change into pants first. At least, for the men had to. We actually, my daughter and I would wear like skirts or pants too.
Yeah.
So we also couldn't wear shorts. So
advantage to being a lady. We can just wear a skirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a skirt and it's fine.
I do. I have a big skort collection. So
Yeah.
that's what I default to on trips like that. So the buffet, Disney has really limited hours with the buffet,
Yes.
and the selection was very small in comparison to Celebrity. So we didn't actually know what we were missing with buffets until we experienced what Celebrity had. It was amazing. It was just like goes on forever. All these different cuisines, all these made to order stations that were constantly changing. It's open
And
like
it's available every night.
yeah, it's available till like 1 a.m. on our cruise every night. And my teenage son is someone who enjoys eating late at night, and that was an option for him on Celebrity. So he enjoyed that. I'm in bed by then, but he enjoyed that. The food in the buffet did seem slightly higher quality to us. That's our personal opinion. We thought it was a bit nicer than what we were seeing on what we have seen on Cabanas. So we've only been on the Magic and the Dream so far in our family. We've had 2 cruises on each. So hoping to
diversify you, Derry.
Yeah, we're really need to diversify here. So hopefully sometime soon that will happen. But so we can't compare it to the newer ships, obviously. That's probably maybe that
The food is the exact same.
Okay.
Except for the deck food. The deck food, you've heard about it on the Wish and the Fantasy. That's where it shines. In Celebrity, I would say they don't shine on the deck food. They have like one stand that you can get maybe a hot dog, but you can get a hamburger and some French fries. And that's like the only thing that they have on deck.
I agree with that, except their buffet is right there. Like the grill that's the pool deck is literally like 2 feet from
That's
this
true.
huge buffet. So for me, I just ignored the grill and just went into the buffet. They also had this really interesting thing, the solarium, which is their quasi adults only enclosed area on the pool deck that has a couple pools and some whirlpools in it. And it has a spa cafe that's open for limited hours around lunchtime, like noon to 3 or 2 or something. And it had what they considered health foods, which were pretty good. I tried some of those. It's kind of like tapas style, almost like these little plates of healthy foods. And they had some like oatmeal banana cookies and stuff like that, like low sugar, healthy foods. And they had smoothies also. So they had like a smoothie counter in there. You can get smoothies on Disney Cruise Line too. So that really wasn't much of a difference, but it was interesting. Yeah, I'm interested in how many. I didn't really see a lot of people when I was passing through use the spa cafe. So I don't know. I'm interested if that's popular among their guests or not. I don't know.
We would go in there. I forgot about that. They have like little like feta and watermelon or a little like caprese salad type thing on a stick. And so that's great for like a quick grab and go option.
Yeah, it was very fresh and, keep me off some of the French fries and stuff when I just wanted a quick snack. Otherwise, I would have gone to the other end where there's lots of chocolate things and fried things. So, yeah. So that was different. Okay, main dining. Main dining on Celebrity is just all in one space. The main dining room, at least on Summit, is 3 stories tall. So everyone's in there, or maybe it's 2 decks tall. Let me think about that. Is it 2 or 3? I guess it's just 2 on this ship. It's smaller. We did have the same serving team every night because we had a set dining time and they were fantastic. I will say the portion seemed smaller to us in main dining, but again, you could order more like you could with most cruise lines, so that we didn't need to do that. But we just noticed that the portions were smaller. There's no entertainment of any kind during dinner, which was really different for us. And it was a little bit weird. We just weren't used to sitting at the same table in the same place every night. I don't know. That's not what they have on Disney. So it wasn't horribly boring, but it was a little bit boring, I guess, for the kids. The kids mentioned that in particular. Let's see. We did feel like they were a little bit more focused on serving gourmet style food. We like that. We actually are really into food. So for us, we appreciated that. And of course, this was Christmas too. So they had some special menus because it was Christmas. Like they gave us lobster and we had, scallops and shrimp done specially and special desserts and stuff because we had Christmas Eve and then we had Christmas Day and whatever. So there was a bit more extra things going on. And I've never been on a Disney cruise over any major holiday. So I can't really compare those accurately.
I will say that if you don't have adventurous eaters and you have a spaghetti eater or something, you can just get that and you can pre-order the night before, just like you would on a Disney ship. Like this would not shock Lake, but my child on our last Celebrity cruise ate spaghetti for 7 nights. The noodle sometimes isn't always spaghetti, right? It's a pasta with meat sauce in a noodle. I know like sometimes he had like butterfly but or bow tie pasta, but you could pre-order that. So then you can just your serving team knows, this person in your party wants to have spaghetti every night.
Oh, that's great. There was one random night on our cruise where we didn't know what was happening, but it took so long to get our food. The other nights were all like really timely and not a big deal, but this was like we were leaving the dining room at like 11:30 at night and our dinner started at 8:15. So we still don't know like what happened there or like, but it was just once. I don't know. Something happened that wasn't obvious as to why that night would have been so different, but that was frustrating. I have not experienced that on Disney before.
What did you think about entertainment?
We surprisingly really enjoyed the entertainment on Celebrity. It was not anything like a, story like a play like we're used to with Disney, but they had a really talented group of singers and dancers, and they even had like a house band that was accompanying them. And they did a special show on Christmas that they do like just for Christmas even. And each night they had a different, I think there was only one night that they weren't performing. They were like very hardworking. They had a different theme to their music. It was like songs strung together with a loose theme, but the dancing and the singing was just such high quality. Yeah, we were thinking that we might just go to like one or two of the shows and weren't expecting that to be a big part of our experience, but we thought that this group was super talented. So I have to say, we really enjoyed that. We did really miss, though, all the other activities that Disney offers. Like Celebrity had very limited trivia, like very limited crafts. Mostly they're like selling things in all of the shops that they have. And a lot of the activities are around visiting the shops at certain times. So that part we were less impressed with. But I will say I signed up my husband for a behind the scenes ship tour, and he had such a great time on that. And I think everyone wishes Disney would offer it, but it was really interesting for him to see everything that happens behind the scenes. And he reported back, and I was really interested in what he saw. So that was very cool. And we did a whole bunch of excursions with Celebrity, which normally were more like DIY with our port adventures on Disney. And they actually handled them pretty well. Yeah, we were pretty impressed with the prices and like the value of Celebrity's excursions. So that I think was also a plus with Celebrity.
What was a highlight from your ports? So St. Martin, St. Lucia, Antigua, Dominica, I think you said your ports were?
Yeah, we were on Barbados on Christmas Day.
Okay.
And because it was going to be Christmas Day, I was unsure like what would be open, like what we should. In the end, it turned out a lot of things were open because there was a ship in port, but I didn't really know that going in. So I had booked just on my own, I had booked a tour guide to take us around. And he was really fantastic. Took us literally entire tour of Barbados, and like we had a nice lunch in the middle. And it was just so interesting hearing about the economy, like the history of Barbados, the people there. We learned all about like my kids' ages, like what their schooling is like and what they do for fun. We saw the cricket place. We saw where Rihanna lived. Anyway, like we got to see all of these really cool sights, and it was just seemed like really special spending the day with him. And then, had to give him a really big tip. Obviously, on Christmas, he was working on Christmas, but we really appreciated that he was. And the other port that we really loved a lot was Dominica. That port is really struggling financially, economically. That country's lost a lot when COVID hit and ships stopped coming. They just really depend on people coming. So Dominica is just beautiful and amazing. And the waterfalls, we did several hikes there, a Celebrity excursion that we took. And our tour guide there too was super interesting and told us all about their economy and what they're going through and what people normally do there for work. And all of that was super interesting. So I think those two were my favorite.
Well, Derry, we appreciate you coming and talking about these two different cruises. I've got one last question kind of regarding this compare and contrast. Now that you've tried Celebrity, are you inclined to go back towards Celebrity? Do you still lean towards Disney, or are we kind of in between or looking at a different cruise line to try next?
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, I think there's probably nothing that I don't want to try at least once that's like a major mainline cruise line. Maybe some other ones I'm interested in, but yes, would love to do Celebrity again. I really want to do a newer ship now that I've done the Summit. I think a newer ship would be a very different experience, maybe even like a different cruise line.
I just thought of something we didn't discuss, the kids, and I even have it on my piece of paper. How did the kids sort of, and that you wanting to experience a newer ship reminded me because I think there probably is a little bit more on the newer ships. There's still a lot. There's no rock climbing wall like you're going to find on Royal Caribbean. You know, they're owned by the same people.
Right.
There's like a pool, and sometimes there's like the beanbag toss and a ping pong table. But like, what did your kids, and you had a heavy port intense cruise, but what did they do? Like when they had downtime, what did they do?
That's a good question. So my daughter did do a couple things with the teen club that they have on Celebrity. I know she went to the opening, like the icebreakers type first night and talked with the counselors and the other kids. And then they had like a scavenger hunt later in the cruise that she did. But yeah, you know, we've done 2 European cruises with Disney that were both 11 nights. And so the kids have gotten used to like the ports being the main thing that we do. And then we just kind of like chillax when we're not in the port. My son did miss the movie theaters. That's a big thing for him. He loves to go see movies on Disney, and there's not a movie theater per se on Celebrity. They have movies on the top deck in like the rooftop in the aft, but it's not all day long. And it's just actually it's sort of first, a lot of them were like newer movies. There are a few like, because it was Christmas, they had some older sort of nostalgic Christmas movies too. But he would prefer to have like an actual movie theater with movies running constantly. That's what he does for fun for the most part. You know, they had their technology with them. I don't know that they did a lot of that though. I think they kind of disappeared. They kind of walked around, checked things out. I know my husband and daughter went to one of the trivias. They had like a general trivia that they went to. There is also a casino on Celebrity. That's actually a really
I
big
was just
difference.
gonna say, did you and your husband try the casino?
No, we
And
didn't.
I love that they are smoke free. Every ship is smoke free.
I'm very, very allergic to tobacco in all forms. So for me, that was a really important thing, and actually a reason why I have yet to be on Royal Caribbean, because
and it seeps through
it's an issue. Yeah, I'm just super sensitive to it. So a little bit more sensitive maybe than someone who just doesn't care for it.
Right.
So I've been kind of afraid to travel on cruises where there's some issues with that seepage. So I'm doing more research to see what else, you know, some of them might be better than others, but it's great not to have to worry about that on Celebrity. Yeah.
For the listeners, Celebrity gives you on the first day of the cruise, like I think it's the first day, like $15 or $10 in play on their like video poker or slot machines. So if you wanted to try, and then there'll be like another random time where they'll give you like a free chip or something like that to play a table game. So at least look in their version of the Navigator and see when they're giving you free money, because why not try? Maybe you can turn that $10 into 10,000.
That's true. Yep. And what that just reminded me of our biggest complaint, or I shouldn't say complaint. We don't really have complaints, but we really miss the laundry facilities.
Yeah.
Celebrity has no laundry facilities. We had kind of packed appropriately, but we're still thinking we would send out maybe like one bag, but we never did because they said it would take 3 days and it was very, very expensive. So we just dealt with it. And we actually spent some time in an Airbnb back in San Juan after we debarked. So we were able to do all of our laundry there.
Yeah, that is a good point. They do not have washing machines that you can access.
Right. Yeah. They will do your laundry for you, but it's pretty pricey.
And on longer cruises, I believe they have that laundry bag where you can fill it. And then if you have status with them at one of the upper levels, you get a bag of laundry. But that's not helpful for a new cruiser.
That is correct. I saw that information. So I know that is definitely still happening. That would have happened on this cruise, but since we were new, we had 0 status. So
yeah. Okay. So you would go on Celebrity again, but you're open to other lines. Do you have any cruises booked for you and your family or you individually?
So at the moment, the only thing I have booked is my daughter and I are going to sail Disney Destiny in next February.
Yay.
So we're going to do a 4-night again to Lookout Key and Castaway Key from Fort Lauderdale. So kind of similar with one more night, which I think is going to be nicer. It was kind of hard to do the 3-night thing. I had never done something that short before. It was better than nothing by a million, but I think I would prefer the 4 nights or longer. So
for sure.
We will book something else in the meantime, but that's all we have officially booked right now.
Well, Derry, before we take it out, do you have anywhere you would like to plug?
Well, you can find me at Magic Path Travel on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience on not just the Dream, but also the Celebrity Summit. Always nice to branch out and see what else is out there, compare and contrast cruise lines. I know my wife and I have been interested in trying Celebrity, but we haven't quite made it to really booking anything other than Norwegian for our third-party cruises right now.
Yeah, that's great though. I haven't tried Norwegian, but I've heard your guys' reports and it sounds like a great one to try.
And the Summit, the ship that Derry was on is in Tampa sometimes. The sister ship, the Millennium, is in Tampa sometimes, I believe, as well. And so it's definitely, because it has to be a smaller ship so they can fit under that bridge. And Tampa is a pretty easy, my understanding, cruise port to cruise out of. So hearing that you had just such a good experience, this older and smaller ship, that makes that port even more appealing.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend trying the Summit if you have an opportunity. It's really beautiful.
Port of Tampa is 20 minutes from me.
Oh my gosh.
Like your house?
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a hop and a skip. Well, Christy, before we take it out, where can our listeners follow you?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and in general on the internet at Pack Your Pixie Dust. And Lake, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at MouseGen, and you can always follow the podcast on Instagram or Facebook at DCL Podcast. Or, of course, you can follow our Patreon at patreon.com/DCL Podcast.
Yeah, Derry can attest. We have a great Facebook group, don't we?
It's awesome. Yeah, my second home over there.
Well, Derry, thank you again so much for coming on. But that is going to do it for this episode, and we will see y'all next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.